Hello Year 4 and welcome back. We are on to lesson 6 of our math sessions. So let's have a look and see what we're doing today, shall we? So we're going to do a little bit of recapping to start off with. So we're going to recap some comparing numbers work that we did in our game at the beginning. And we're going to do a little recap of what we were doing in lesson 5 on rounding to the nearest 10. And then we're going to go on and round to the nearest 100 today. And we're also going to come back and do some of that explaining our thinking. So where we wrote an explanation of what was going on inside our head and what we were thinking about in maths. So we're going to have another go at doing that and hope you'll be even better this time. So let's have a look at our game. Let's just check we've got what we need first, and we're going to go on to our game. So first thing we need is a pencil, we need a maths book as usual, we need a different colour for our marking, and then one of those items that you've been using to create those numbers. So either a dice or some cards just with the numbers 0 to 9 on, or some playing cards, because we're going to use those for our game to start off with. So press pause, go and get what you need, and then let's get started. Okay, so our game today I've called the number train. And what I'd like you to do is make a copy of that number train for me. So I've just drawn mine, look, on a whiteboard here. So I've just drawn a train and then 3 carriages, really simply. So you can either draw that on a piece of plain paper or maybe in the back of your maths book. Okay, and we're going to create our game using that. So quickly press pause and make sure you've got a train that looks similar to mine. Don't worry too much about it. I've just drawn literally some squares with some circles with it. So it doesn't have to be a beautiful train. It just has to have those 3 carriages on the back. And then I will show you what we're going to do with them. So hopefully you've drawn that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our 4 numbers. Okay, our 3 numbers, sorry. And we are going to have 3 4-digit numbers. So using your dice or using your playing cards or your number cards, just select 4 of them and create that into a 4-digit number. And you're going to write that in your first carriage. Okay, so press pause, create your first number. Okay, then we're going to do exactly the same again with your dice or your playing cards or your 0 to 9 cards. Create yourself a number, a 4-digit number, and write it in your second carriage. And then you're going to create yourself a 3rd one as well and write that in your 3rd carriage. So press pause and make sure you've got those 3 4-digit numbers written in your carriages. Off you go. Right, now what do we do with these numbers? Well, the idea is that we think about the size of those numbers. So we're going to be comparing the size of those numbers. Okay, so what I want you to look at is your first number in your first carriage. So you can see I've got the number 4,925. Okay, and if I'm going to be comparing it to the number next to it, I need to be looking at the most significant digit first. So we're going to be looking at the thousands. This one's in the 4,000s. This one's in the 3,000s. And now I have to think about which one is bigger. So this one is in the 4,000. So this one is worth more, isn't it? So I'm going to add in one of those greater than or less than signs. And remember, the crocodile always wants to eat the biggest number. So I'm going to pop in there a sign that shows that this number is greater than this number. And you can see the open end of the crocodile's mouth is towards the bigger number. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to look at the second train and the 3rd train, and I'm going to say, okay, which one's bigger this time? So I've got 3,500 here. Oh, I've got 3,500 here as well. So I'm going to have to look down at the tens digit this time. So I've got 3,520, and here I've got 3,510 in there. So that one means this one is bigger. So I'm going to pop in another sign that shows that 3,529 is greater than 3,516. So we can have a go at that now. Put those greater than or less than or equal signs in. Okay, and I'd like you to create 3 trains for me. Okay, so you're going to produce one, put your numbers in, draw in your 2 symbols that you need, and then make another train and do the same, and really start looking at the size of those numbers, making sure you're starting with the most significant digit, which in this case is going to be the thousands digit. Okay, and when you've done that, you can come back. Okay, hopefully your maths brain is well and truly switched on now. You've got your 3 trains. Make sure that you've got your greater than and less than signs in the right places, and then we're going to move on for today. So we're going to remind ourselves about how we were rounding to the nearest 10 in our last lesson. So you remember we identify which place we are rounding to. And so today it's going to be, while we're recapping, it's going to be the tens digit that we're going to be looking at because we're rounding to the nearest 10. So if we've got a number like 47 over here, this is the number we're thinking about. Is that number going to stay the same or is it going to go up? And we look at this digit here, and because it's a 7, it tells us that this digit has to go up. So that 10's number that it's closest to is 50. Okay, and remember we did exactly the same with hundreds, tens and units. So if we had the number 347, okay, we're still worrying about this digit here and whether we do anything with this digit here. And because the 7's there, we still do, and we keep the 100 the same. So 347 would round to 350. And again, if we had an even bigger number, if we had a number 4,347, okay, these two digits aren't changing because we're rounding to the nearest 10. So it's only this digit we're worried about. So we look at our units number and we say, yeah, it's still a 7. So we're going to have our 5 there. We're going to have a 0 there, and we're keeping our thousands and our hundreds. So 4,347 is closest to 4,350. And remember, our cutoff point here is the number 5. So if it's 5 or more, we're going to round our tens digit up. If it's 4, 3, 2, 1 or 0, we're going to keep our tens number as it is. Okay, so we can have a go now and see if you can remember how to do those. So there's a whole page there of 8 of them, and you're rounding every one of those numbers to the nearest 10. And you're going to use that approximately equals to sign again. So you'll write 67 is approximately equal to, and you'll write the number rounded to the nearest 10. Okay, so date and title rounding to the nearest 10 in your book, and then work through those 8 for me and come back when you've done them. And I'm sure you'll be able to do brilliantly because you did really well yesterday. Off you go. Okay, how did you get on? Have we managed it? Let's have a look at those numbers, shall we? So 67 rounded to the nearest 10 made 70 because we had a 7 in the ones digit. 82 rounded to the nearest 10 stays at 80 because we had 2 in the ones column. So get your marking pen out, make sure you've marked those 2, tick them if they're right, write the correct answer next to it if it's wrong. Then 489, we're keeping that 400. The 80, is it going to stay as 80 or is it going to go to 90? Well, if we have a look at this digit here, it's a 9, so it means it's going to 490. And then you can see the answers to the others there. So we have 600, 680, 980, 6,790, and 5,430. How did you get on? Hopefully you did really well. If you're still struggling with that, then you could use your dice or your playing cards and create yourself another set of 2, 3, and 4 digit numbers and have another go at that, just so you're really certain before we move on. But if you're happy that you know what you're doing now, we're going to move on and we're going to think about something slightly different now. So we're going to think about what's been going on in our heads while we've been rounding. So Splash has made a comment. He's a bit like Thinking Tom today. He's made a statement and we have to decide whether Splash is right or whether Splash is wrong. So Splash says, when rounding to the nearest 10, the largest number that rounds to 6,890 is 6,889. So he's ending up with 6,890. He's ending up with this number here, isn't he? Okay, and he's saying the biggest number that rounds to that is this number. And he's right, that number does round to 6,890, but is it the biggest number? Or are there some other numbers that are bigger than this, larger than this, that also round to this number? So you need to decide. If you think this number is the biggest number that rounds to 6,890, then you'll write Splash is correct because, and explain why you think he's correct. If you think he is wrong, I want you to write Splash is wrong because, and then explain to me why you think he's wrong. Okay, so remember you can use, if you're writing numbers in your explanation, you can write them in digits, you don't have to write them in words. You can use mathematical symbols in your explanation, but you're also going to need some words as well. Okay, so go away now. Have a really good think about that. Can you think of a number that's bigger than that, that still rounds to 6,890, or is that the biggest number you can think of? Press pause and have a little think about that now and see if you can write that explanation for me. Okay, how did you get on? What did you think? Is Splash right or is Splash wrong? Well, he was wrong, because although 6,889 does round to 6,890, he's right about that. This isn't the biggest number that rounds to 6,890, because there are numbers that are bigger than this number that still round. So if I wrote the number 6,891, which is bigger than this number, it still rounds to this, doesn't it? Because if we look at this tens digit and we look at our units, the units is 1, so that stays as it is. So that would end up being 6,890. So there are definitely more. And the largest one, which I'm hoping you found, was 6,894. So we had the number 6,894. If you look here, here's our tens digit again. We've got a 4 there, so that's staying as it is. So it definitely rounds to 6,890. Okay. And the next number after that would be 6,895. And what I've said in my explanation is this number doesn't round to 6,890. It actually goes up to 6,900. Because when we look at this, it says it has to go up. So 6,890, the next 10 after that is 6,900. So actually Splash was wrong. I wonder how you got on. So have a little look at yours now. If you said he was wrong, but actually you didn't end up with the biggest number, that's okay, because you realised there were some bigger numbers. Maybe you just didn't go high enough. If you thought he was right, I can see why you might have thought that, because he was right in his statement that 6,889 rounds to 6,890, but it wasn't the largest number. Okay, so have a look at your explanation now, see how you've got on. If you think, no, I haven't got it at all, then you might just want to have another look at my explanation to help you. And we're going to come back and do some more explanations later on in the unit. So well done if you're giving that a try. Remember I said before, explanations are super hard. So don't feel downhearted if you didn't quite manage it. But if you did manage it, you've done exceptionally well. Your maths brain is definitely turned on today. Right, we're going to carry on with some rounding now, but we're going to think about rounding to the nearest 100. Okay, so the rules are really similar to when we round to the nearest 10. We've just got to apply them to slightly bigger numbers. So we still have to identify which place we are rounding to. So this time, the number we're thinking about is the hundreds number, because we're rounding to the nearest 10. So if I had the number 3,423, okay, this number is the one we're deciding on now. We're saying, is this number closest to 3,400 or is it closest to 3,500? And the way we decide that is by looking at the digit next to it in the tens column, the 2. And it's the same rule again. If it's 0, 1, 2, 3 or 4, then our hundreds number stays the same. If it's 5 or higher, then this hundreds number goes up by 1. Okay, so let's have a look. This is a 2, so it means it stays the same. So our thousands aren't changing. We're rounding to the nearest 100. So we've decided it's staying the same. And then we have to make sure we put our zeros in the tens and the units. Okay, so it's the same rule. It's all about, but this time it's all about the tens number, not the units number. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples, shall we? Should we have another look at that, those rockets before we do that? Let's have a look at those and see how we get on. So, our rockets today, we're going to be looking at slightly larger numbers because we're rounding to the nearest 100. We're going to use our number line to give us a little bit of help to start off with. So here you go. So here is our number, 556. And you can see the halfway point between 500 and 600, because we've got 100 between them now, because we're rounding to the nearest 100, is 550. And 556 sits the closer to the 600 end, doesn't it? So we're going to be rounding to 600. But if we didn't have our number line, what we would do is we say, okay, the hundreds, are we changing that or are we leaving it as it is? And we have to look at this tens number here. The tens number is a 5, which tells us that this number has to go up 1. So our correct answer, off he goes. Right, let's have a look at another one. So again, you can see there, we've got 100 and 200 this time, because we're deciding which 100 it's closest to. And we've got the number 111. We have a look at that 100 digits, and we say, is it staying the same or is it going up? And we look at the tens digit to make that decision, and the tens digit is just a 1. So it's staying at closest to 100. Right, should we see if we can do it without a number line now? Let's go back and do it without our number line. So we're looking, remember, at the tens digit to help us decide whether we're going up or staying the same in our hundreds digit. So here we go, 478 rounded to the nearest 100. So is it staying at 400 or is it going up to 500? Look at that tens digit and point to the rocket you think is the right answer. So 478, is it going 400? Is it going to 500? 450 can't be right, because when we're rounding to the nearest 100, we should have a 0 in the tens column and a 0 in the units column, because we're only interested in rounding to the nearest 100, so we don't want to know about the tens and units. So which one did you decide on? I'm hoping you went, oh, it's a 7, so we need to go up, and it's 5. There we go. Let's do one more of those. So 687 rounded to the nearest 100. So is the 100 going to stay at 600 or is it going to go up to 700? Check that tens digit and point to the right rocket for me. I'm going over here to 700. There we go. So now we're going to try it with slightly bigger numbers. Same rules. We're still worrying about our hundreds digit and we're using our tens digit to make the decision. But this time, we've got a slightly bigger number. So we've got 3,864, okay? The 3,000 staying, we're not touching the thousands, we're worrying about the hundreds at the moment. Sometimes we might have to alter that thousands number, but the number we have to look at first is this hundreds number. So we look at the hundreds number, it's 800. Then we check the tens number. Oh, the tens number is a 6, so that tells us it's going up. So is it going to be 3,800 or 3,900? Make your decision now. 3,000. Manage it. Okay, one more like that. So go straight to our hundreds number because we're rounding to the nearest 100. Check our tens number. Does it tell us to stay the same or round up? Point to your rocket. Is it going to be this one? Is it going to be this one? It's a 3 in the tens digit. 700. How did you get on? Did you manage it? Right, if you think you need a little bit more practice of that, you can head to this website if you've got your computer with you. You can go to Top Marks Rocket Rounding and you can have a go at rounding to the nearest 100, and you can even use in the menu, you can see here, you can choose whether you want it with a number line or without. So if you're finding it really tricky, you might want to put the number line in to start off with. If you think, I think I've got this, I've mastered this today, I'm going to give it a try, and you're feeling brave, then you can head straight for the task. So the task today involves rounding numbers to the nearest 100. So I'm going to whiz through this because we've done all this now. Here we go. So those 8 numbers, I want them all rounded to the nearest 100. So write the title for me, rounding to the nearest 100. And then we're going to use our wiggly equal sign again, our approximately equals to. So for number 1, I would write 339 and my approximately equals to sign. And tell me, would that be closest to the 300 or closest to the 400? Okay, so have a go at all 8. If you want to, okay, you can have a second look at them before you come back. So just make sure you double check once you've got to the end. So once you've done all 8, go back and have a look at, have I followed all the procedures to round, just before you come back to check your answers, okay? Once you've done your 8, get your marking pen ready and come back and we'll have a look at the answers. Press pause now. Okay, we've done the 8. How have you got on? Let's have a look. So 339. So we know it's the hundreds number we're thinking about. Is that going to stay the same or go up? Check the tens. It's a 3, so it's going to stay the same. So it's going to become 300. Okay. Number 2. Is that 600? Saying it's 600 or 700? Well, there is a 4 in the tens column, so it's going to 600. Number 3, 899. It was a tricky one, wasn't it? Because it was, are we staying at 800 or are we going up to 900? Well, actually, it's really close to 900, isn't it? So I think we were fine with that one. The next one is, I think, one of the hardest ones they gave you, 999. So when we're talking about hundreds, sometimes it crosses into a new thousand, and so it changes the thousands number. So this one, it became from 999, we had no thousands to start off with, and now we've got 1,000 because it's 900 or 1,000, it's closer to 1,000, isn't it? Right, and then check number 5, number 6, number 7, and number 8. Press pause while you do that. And then we're done. Really good. So we've done some comparing numbers today, we've done some rounding to 10, we've done some explaining maths, and we've done some rounding to 100. So lots of hard maths thinking today. Well done. What are we up to tomorrow? Well, tomorrow we're going to come back to our rounding to the nearest 10 and 100 and make sure that's really firmly embedded in our heads. And then we're going to do some more explaining our maths thinking. Okay, so maybe Splash will have some challenges for us, or our Thinking Tom and Thinking Tanya will be back. We'll have to see tomorrow, won't we? Okay, well done today. I will see you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.